There are unfortunately more horror stories than there are positive stories.
Our experience with them has been very, very positive.
Don't angry quit.
You kind of still need to earn your seat at the table.
Gen Z's in the workplace. Good hire or bad hire?
Some of the negative stories happen when the lawyers that we work with, unfortunately, some of them, instead of appearing ambitious and driven, they appear more entitled. So when you come into a job, before you even prove yourself, you ask for a pay raise or you ask for a promotion. That is what makes it actually quite scary to hire Gen Zs.
For us in our current company, we don't see promotion as a reward. We promote someone when we see that individual is able to already operate at the next level, right? So it's like you are ready for the next level, you've demonstrated you are it, now you get promoted. So like the reward for good work is more work. It is not, but you must show that you can do the work.
So a Money Mind survey found that 58% of Gen Zs expect starting at least $5,000, and universities have found that the actual median starting salary is about $4,500. So what really is a realistic starting salary range that Gen Z should expect?
I think it's about there.
Really?
At least for the tech industries at this point in time. Yeah. But the thing about it is that it really depends on industry and the demand and supply of talent. And I think one thing that you want to remember is that, you know, if you want to work from home and work remote, then if you think about it, you're actually now competing with a global talent pool. And then you need to ask yourself, is the salary that you're asking for competitive with a global talent pool? And can you add value that is more than the salary that you're being paid?
Yeah.
One of the things that I think about is that when you try to negotiate for a salary, I think you should also, especially early on in your career, you might want to optimize for something else. Optimize for a place that allows you to learn faster, allows you autonomy, allows you to make decisions, allow you to fail safely, and then also one where the culture fits. I think those factors has a lot more long-term value, and it compounds a lot better than your starting pay. So that will be something that, you know, I'll maybe advise people to look out for.
I think we miss the plot when we ask just purely about whether Gen Zers are asking for too much. The thing that I hear most about Gen Zers is that they want high pay, but they don't want to put in the hours. So then this is a problem. You have to calibrate your expectations. I know people who say, you know, I know that I want to not travel overseas for work, right? My family comes first. I want to go to the gym. And therefore, I'm at peace if I don't get promoted as fast. Then this is a realistic person. But if someone says, hey, I don't want to come to the office to work, I don't want to go for meetings, I don't want to be front-facing, but I want the high salary, then there's something else.
So, you know, one thing to work from home, I think after COVID, I think it's not something that one generation wanted. I think across the board, people got used to working from home. One of the things I tell all the folks that I hire and manage is that you got to ask yourself, right, in a world of large language models and where everything can be answered by AI and everything else, what's the value add of a human? So what I try to share with the people I work with is that I understand the desire to want to work from home. I understand the desire to cut your commute time. But if you're talking about trying to give yourself an edge, right, trying to make sure that, you know, you can accelerate your career, then face-to-face has a lot of value. Because, you know, it's not because the old bosses want to measure the time, but because when you're present, it's a lot easier to communicate information with a lot of density and a lot faster, the feedback loop. And so, you know, if there's an advice in there, it is sometimes come to the office, or come to the office more often. But be deliberate about coming to the office. Don't come to the office and sit in front of a laptop and stare at the screen.
Hide in a meeting room.
Hide in a meeting room, yes, you're absolutely right. Come to ask good questions and meet more people.
When you screen interns, is job hopping a red flag?
I liken moving jobs to dating, right? If I'm dating a guy and he changes girlfriends every 6 months, it's a flight risk, right? Who would want to go with a guy like that? And that's the problem with job hoppers. I am a recruiter. So when we were presenting CVs of junior lawyers, we had a problem because almost every CV had very short stints. We're talking like 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, 1 year and a half if you're lucky. And then our clients were like saying, my goodness, is this the best you can do? And once we had a Gen Zer who stayed in one job for 5 years, We called him Cristiano Ronaldo because every firm wanted to offer him. They were trying to outbid him. And why? Because it's so unusual. He's an outlier. I'm not suggesting everyone needs to stay in a job for 5 years, not at all. I was a job hopper, right? So I stayed in my first job for 3 years, my next job for 4 months, and then 2 years, and then 4 years, and then I've been in my current business for 10 years. Quitting without a job is the norm now, right? I need a mental health break. And I also had a 2-month break, which was like the best 2 months of my life when I was in my 20s. But if you quit without a plan B in this economy, it can be very dangerous. And it is a red flag when an interviewer gets a lot of CVs and you're the only one with no real explanation and no reference check.
How crucial are the first 90 days? What do you look out for to tell if Gen Z new hire will eventually be a high-value contributor?
So a lot of Gen Zers don't realize that their first 90 days or first 9 days, they are being watched.
Yep.
Right? How they dress, whether they come in on time, whether they brush their hair, whether they decide to come in or they don't even inform if they're working from home. Every little bit counts. It's the small things. Right. And all these small things add up. If you're not putting in effort and other people have to pick up your slack, they notice. Right? If they realize that you're not taking on feedback, they also notice. Actually, what I would say is really important in the first 90 days is that you, as a KPI, you should set to have lunch with someone outside of your department every week, at least once. In your first 90 days, you need to make your boss's job easier. That is it. It's not rocket science. Just find out what your boss wants. What's his biggest pain point? And then ask, okay, how can I do that? Be resourceful. Don't wait.
Actually, it's a little bit of a honeymoon period. People are a lot more forgiving because, you just join the company.
Learning.
Yeah, learning, right? No one assumes that you know everything. So meet more people, have more lunch, don't stick to the same group, ask more questions, right? So compress your learning, right? And just do as much as you can to add value. And you won't know what is the right thing to add value to if you're not talking to people and if you're not listening.
Compressing the learning.
I come to the office at least 80% of the time, if not every day, actually in the first 90 days.
FaceTime still quite important.
Yes. I want to share this story. There was this lady who heard an off-the-cuff remark from the boss, like, hey, there are all these AI tools to improve productivity. I heard about this. I wonder how it's like. And then he just left it at that. She then went on to research all the AI tools, shortlisted 3, spoke to the vendors, got the quotes, did an Excel spreadsheet, gave to the boss, and yes, what do you think? He got a bonus at the end.
For sure.
Yeah,
Out
for
of
sure,
our own
right?
initiative, right?
Yes, a lot of initiative. Yeah.
What's one thing that Gen Zs can do to get themselves shortlisted and subsequently hired, Shulin?
You first need to have some level of visibility, right? When we say visibility, people think of LinkedIn or Instagram. And I want to say that whilst a lot of Gen Zers are excellent digital natives, they're not using social media in the right way. They're not getting the right type of visibility. Right now, we are just one Google search or ChatGPT search away from finding out someone's digital footprint. So in order to get shortlisted, they not only need to look the part on their CV, look the part in person, they need to make sure they've cleaned up their social media
online
activities.
history.
Yes, yes. And the second tip I would give is actually look the part. So a lot of Gen Zers don't put in enough effort in their appearance. Like if I rocked up today in just a baggy t-shirt with no makeup, I might not even you might reject me for this interview. Yeah, and the reality is a lot of Gen Zers go for comfort and not so much grooming. And I know this sounds quite superficial, but if you come into a room and you just don't look the part, you're not going to command the respect or attention even before you open your mouth. So that's one. And then the other one I would say to get shortlisted and get hired is during a job interview, you need to be able to explain why you do what you do and actually what do you do. So it's shocking because a lot of job interviews now, a lot of Gen Zers are unable to communicate what it is that they do at work.
Wow.
And they're not able to maintain eye contact. That's something we noticed.
Yeah. The eye contact thing is a real thing.
Yes, eye contact.
Yeah.
So Isaac, what's your one thing?
So my experience interviewing Gen Zs is that nowadays actually a lot of the interviewees, they're very polished and very articulate. I suspect that a lot of them have a lot of online material where they can practice and they know what are the right answers to the standard questions. But once you go off script, that's where things break down. And talking about what you do, right? So when you ask ask an interviewee, what do you do? And then they will give the standard answer. But once you start tearing apart parts of the answer and go deeper, it's off script. That's where things break down. So I think one thing that can make an interviewee stand out is to be able to think on the spot, being able to ask good clarifying questions, being able to demonstrate curiosity about the question that's being asked, and just react on the spot. And how might you prepare for that? Because there's no like standard 10-year series for that.
Yeah.
One thing I encourage everyone to do is try to put yourself in as many new situations, uncomfortable situations. Try to increase the breadth of problems that you encounter and try to gain experience solving them. Life jobs, they're not always following the script. So the best employees are the ones that are able to respond well.
I think it's beyond the textbook answers, right?
Yes. And actually, during a job interview, it would be good to also talk about your personal interests. If you have a side hustle, if you actually have a very interesting hobby, it makes you stand out as a candidate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or even volunteer work.
Yes.
When you're hiring,
Yeah.
you got to be a bit stringent on the hiring process. We don't give people illusions. You know, you join a tech startup, it's got to be fast. You got to put in the effort to learn. You got to, put in the effort to want to ask more questions, want to do the extra work so that you can compress your learning, so that you can add value faster. And I think because of the way we think about the interview process, the people that pass through that gate, more often than not, they are really ready and prepared for what we expect of any employee in our company. And I think that's one of the reasons why our experience with Gen Zs have been has been a very positive experience. Yeah.
What is one thing that Gen Z should never ever do in the workplace?
Well, they should never burn bridges. It applies to millennials and Gen Xers, right? There was once, I know a Gen Zer who quit and she didn't want to serve her notice and she got her mom to pay off her notice period. She got the check and she threw it in the person's face. That's a burn bridge forever. Come on. And it's so ridiculous because the market in Singapore is so small. And people talk, right? Obviously, I'm not going to name names, but the reality is this person's reputation will travel with them forever. Yes. Forever. And whatever you put out there on social media, you may think it's cool, it's getting you likes, but know this, people are talking behind your back. It makes you look unprofessional, makes you unhireable, and it actually makes you the laughing stock. Your friends might be like, oh yeah, wow, so interesting, but they may be talking behind your back. So don't over-emote. Yes, feel your feelings. I'm a big believer in that. Your feelings are informing you of things. But please do not be driven by your emotions to make impulsive decisions which you'll regret later on.
Yeah.
And don't angry quit.
What tips can you share with Gen Zs on how they can get into leadership roles relatively quickly in their career?
Yeah. So and maybe this is something that only happens in tech companies. Increasingly, every organization wants to be a flat organization, right? And everyone's opinion matters, and everyone should have a say or contribute to the conversation. I think one thing that we can learn is that experience still matters, and you kind of still need to earn your seat at the table. So one thing I would advise is, earn the seat at the table, and it's okay to ask questions. I think it's good that the Gen Zs speak up more, but you got to find the right time to ask the right question. And it's actually quite interesting. I had an intern who, with the CEO, was asking and talking a lot more, and I was like, sorry, I shouldn't use the word yo, but
No, you should.
I said our CEO is so accomplished, has done so much, he's so much more experienced. You're in a meeting with him. Why are you talking more than asking questions to listen, right? And so I think having a flat organization is great. Innovation, ideas, good ideas can come from everywhere. But I think be a bit more deliberate and in when you ask and what you ask.
Or basically, don't disrespect people who are still a bit more senior or more experienced than you are.
That's actually a very important point. You sometimes do not know where you might accidentally disrespect someone and burn a bridge.
Yeah.
Right? Because
forever.
people remember, right?
Yeah,
People
people
remember.
remember,
Yeah. So if you want to get promoted fast, then the way to think about it is not thinking about how can I increase my title, my rank, but think about it from how can I increase the decision-making rights I have for a broader spectrum of problems and for problems that are a lot more difficult. And the way to then do that is to see what your seniors are doing, what your manager is doing, and figure out how to do that work. right? Take those work off their plate. And I think if you demonstrate that you can do those work effectively, very naturally you'll get promoted. Yeah.
Yes.
Agree?
Okay, so for leadership positions, I hate to say this, right? Not everyone's meant for leadership.
Yes.
Really, no. There's some people who are better off as individual contributors. So really like knowing thyself.
Yes.
And I think we're all on this lifelong journey of knowing who we are, you know, what are we good at, and what do we hate. We shouldn't give this narrative to Gen Zers, like, you know, get promoted, go up the ranks, you should be a manager. Everyone has different strengths, right? And you shouldn't focus on trying to improve your weaknesses. There's this test that I make everyone do in my team, Gallup Strengths Finder test, where you look at your top 10 strengths, and actually you should further reinforce those. But if, let's say, someone realized, I really want to be a leader, I want to be a manager, I think the first thing you should do is ask and have those very uncomfortable conversations with your peers and with your leaders as to how you can level up.
Yeah.
A lot of people quit without having that conversation. And only when they quit, they get a counter offer. I know this because it's very painful as a recruiter. I go through the interview process, I get them an offer, then they say when they quit, they got the promotion. However, you should have had that conversation before you start looking for a job, right? As Asians, I think a lot of us are still taught, oh, just put your head down, work hard, and be quiet. Of course, Gen Zers are more vocal, but they still shy away from having difficult conversations about what does it take to actually get to the next level.
Would you consider Gen Z workers lazy or smart? Shulin?
I want to say smart.
They work smart, right?
Lazy if they do not believe in the vision and they have no passion for or interest in contributing more, right? Lazy is really because actually it's the fault of the manager, I would say. They haven't been able to enroll them in that vision and mission and get them behind it. So a lot of Gen Zers, they're just not bothered because, like, why should I work so hard to enrich you if you're not bothered to take an interest in my own career development? It goes two ways. It's too convenient to label them lazy. I think they're actually really smart, but you need to utilize them and use their strengths in a way that serves the business, serves the team.
Yeah.
Isaac? Yeah.
I echo that. I think it would be very lazy to call them lazy. My experience is that they're really, really smart. I think the key thing is to really understand, you know, what they want for themselves, and then really reframe the work that they do, and make sure that you articulate very clearly the team's purpose, the company's purpose, and make sure it's aligned. And you know, one of the things that you want to also share with the folks that are Gen Zs, right, is that, you know, if the place is not the right place for you, then find another place that's the right place for you. It's not healthy to silent quit, right? Work is still important, boundaries are important, but when you are in a job, there is a responsibility to do it well. So find the right place that fits with you culturally. It shows itself as laziness, but I think a big part of it is impatience. It sometimes translates into people quitting.
Yeah.
Right? And that's because I think we need to build up the idea that some things, to be able to learn, to do well, you need time and you need to experience a certain amount of pain. But once you get over it, the rewards are there, right? And so I think it's the manager's job to figure out how to guide people over that hump and acknowledge that the pain is there, but it's worth it.
Are they harder to manage compared to our fellow millennials or Gen Xers?
So I think the reason why they seem harder to manage is because I think the ability for them to walk away from a situation, especially when it comes to work, is a lot probable, it's a lot higher. And I think it's not so much a reflection of one generation's weakness, but actually I think it's a testament to another generation's strength. So there is a generation of Singaporeans who have built up Singapore to be stable. We've accumulated a lot of capital. So the younger generation now have more options. And because they have more options, it's easier to choose another option. So all that aside, I think once you recognize that, then the key thing to note is that actually managing a good employee is the same across generations. People want to achieve, the good employees want to achieve mastery, they want autonomy, they want their work to be impactful, and they also want to be recognized fairly. So I think those principles haven't changed.
Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Shulin. That's it for our panel. Tell us what you think in the comments.